here at the museum in Delphi, and we're just walking around all the exhibits here. Straight away we went into the sort of prehistoric room, and we found evidence of connections to different parts of the world, as well as Mycenaean settlements up here. But there is evidence of a Neolithic settlement up here we're going to try and find evidence of, and you can actually see it on the site. There's a cave, there's even further up the hill, there's older structures. So let's see what we can find. We're going to have a quick look around the museum first before we head into Delphi proper. And these are some of the very ancient figurines that come from the Mycenaean period, so we know that Delphi is much older than people tell us. It's a very interesting feature. We're seeing these in other Mycenaean sites with the bull head and so on and so forth, and these date from at least 1400 BC. Here we have anthropomorphic bronze figurines from about the 8th century BC, so we know this was at the peak time really of the oracle site. So these bronze figurines are very reminiscent again of what we find in ancient Anatolia, as is this great cauldron and what would have been on top of the cauldron, these beautiful 3D kind of reliefs in bronze. So this Sphinx dates from about 570 BC, obviously influenced by the Sumerians and the Egyptians, which we know were connected with ancient Greece at this time. This looks like a very interesting goddess, one of the oracle goddesses, I would imagine, one that actually received the information and shared it with the wider world. So this is the north side of the Gigantocracy, which is the battle of the Olympian gods against the giants, children of Gaia. So it's interesting that we have this here, because this is like one of the only representations I've seen in the whole of Greece which actually talks about the ancient titans and cyclops being defeated by the more ordered Greeks, and you can see one being subdued behind there. So it's just very intriguing. I mean, we have a whole mythology before the Olympians, before the Greeks were really here, of these giants, with Gaia and Uranus giving birth to the Titans and the Cyclops, and from there Kronos and his group spread out around the world. And actually, just like with the stories of the Nephilim, we have, and the Watchers, we have this thing where Uranus and Gaia were kind of embarrassed by their children because they were so kind of very powerful, and they were like roaming the land with Kronos and his group, who spread to different parts of the world. But some of the Cyclops became masters of stonemasonry, and we'll see examples of that all over Greece with the Polygonal and the Cyclopean, hence the name, masonry we find everywhere. So it's very intriguing. We have this is the giant here with like long hair, kind of defeating other people here. And then we have, basically from the right to the left, are the Athenians and the Greeks attacking the giants who are coming from the left to the right. So here we have the famous Omphalos stone of ancient Delphi, and you can see the size of this is quite large. It's monolithic, and you can see the net carved over it. This is thought now by modern researchers to represent the kind of grid or alignments of surveys around the planet. But in tradition it said that Zeus sent off 2 eagles from the furthest distances of the planet, and where they met they dropped this stone, and this became the center of the world, the Omphalos, and this was placed in the temple of Apollo up at the main site of Delphi, and this marked exactly where the center of the world, the Omphalos, the axis mundi, the navel, would have been in ancient Greek tradition. Now the interesting thing about this is that this is part of a an alignment from Dodona, Delphi, Athens, all the way down to Delos, and all the way across Europe, the famous Apollo Athena line. And this, with Dodona, we have it exactly 1 degree of latitude north of here, but at winter solstice angle. And then southeast we have Delos, which is again 1 degree exactly south of here. So this is precise orientation. So these more likely marked the different latitudes, the sacred latitudes of the ancients, all from a place called Babet in Egypt. It's all exactly natural degrees up from there. The further we go back in time and kind of get to the origins, it was said that a meteoric stone was said to have landed around this area, and it was placed slightly up the mountain from where Delphi is now. And this would have been the original kind of site of Delphi. It would have been the original kind of oracle center. It would have been the Omphalos. It would have been much like we have in Mecca, where a meteoric stone is placed in the center and it's the center of their world. So this is really, really, really intriguing to actually see this in person. Whether it's the original, whether it's a Hellenistic or Roman copy, we're not too sure, but we know the Romans weren't too keen on this kind of stuff here in ancient Greece, and they actually killed off the whole oracle site eventually in a couple of hundred years AD. Immediately we start seeing megalithic blocks scattered around on the ground, and of course behind it more polygonal walls. So there's more than one here. It's not just the one, the famous one up at the main temple. We have these as well. Look at this. This is classic, super ancient, potentially 2720 BC, because we know the Hellenicon pyramid dates to then. But I did not expect to see so much of this before we even got in the site. We're getting polygonal here already, so I'm quite pleased about that. So we have some nice pillars here. This is a sort of classic part of the lower temple here at Delphi. And we'll just keep walking around, we'll have a good look at everything. Already up there though, you can see polygonal walls just behind, up there on the hill. And here as well, just as we walk into the main part of the site. Look at these massive blocks. Again, with the beautiful shaping all around us. Just next to the main polygonal chunks there, we have very large pieces here, quite megalithic. So we're seeing quite a few different styles already before we still head up the hill really. And even over here, just on this side, you can see some cyclopean walls in the background. But also, we have keystone cuts, classic Ptolemaic thing, and also Tiwanaku and other places, but here at Delphi as well. All along these blocks here we have these beautiful kind of inscriptions and incantations, but also notice the protrusions here. These protrusions again are in the style of those in Peru and in ancient Egypt. Many more examples of the keystone cuts all over these stones on the edge of this site here. So there's many different parts to this site as we head up. We see all these quite large stone blocks, all these sort of little rooms, and there's even an area built by the Spartans and so forth. We have sort of what's left of some polygonal chunks just lying around. This isn't the famous wall here. There's a much more famous one which we'll look at in a moment when we get there. So much to see here. See more of these protrusions on the rock. So the sacred Omphalos of Delphi, believed to have fallen from the heavens from the two eagles, or an earlier source suggests that it was actually a meteoric stone. Just up the top there, you can see behind this construction is the polygonal wall, which we're going to go and look at in a moment. And we can see behind the treasury of the Boetans up there, we have more of the wonderfully jigsaw polygonal masonry sort of sliding up the hill there, going all the way up. So this whole area was really covered in this. So whether this was Hellenistic or whether this was earlier, I mean, Julian Cope suggests this could be evidence of prehistoric occupation. Just that alone is kind of intriguing. Behind me is the great rock of the Sibyl. This is the actual rock where oracles were made from. And behind it is the polygonal wall, which we'll look at in more detail. But we have to consider that this is the sacred spot of the site. This is the original site, although there is suggestions of an earlier site further up the hill where the site was first developed. There's evidence of megalithic construction up there, as discussed by Robert Temple in Netherworld. But this is where the oracles actually took place. So the rock of Sibyl is, in one tradition, it was a fallen rock from Phaedrade. According to local tradition, the first prophetess of Delphi, the Sibyl Hierophile, stood at this point to utter her oracles, and this is where the tradition really began. It was even said that she foresaw the fall of Troy, and it's the oldest cult place in Delphi, the ancient sanctuary of Gaia. So this would have been a Gaia site. This would have been related to the Titans of ancient Greece before the traditional Greeks and the other cultures came in and developed this site to what we see it today. And it was so important over hundreds of years. A whole priesthood developed around this, and they would be working with the oracle, whoever this may have been at the time, to interpret it and share it with the world. And people from all over the country, potentially all over Europe and the world, would have been around here. So this is quite a remarkable piece of rock just sitting there. No one's even looking at it, they're just all walking by it. I find this really intriguing. You can see the proximity of it to the polygonal wall right behind it. There always seems to be this connection here. And we have the temple of treasury of Athena there, and we have the polygonal wall behind it, but just in front of the polygonal wall we have the great rock of Sibyl, and the wall continues behind it over there. And of course now we have the remarkable polygonal wall, which was in tradition was said to have been built in the 6th century BC. However, clearly it could be much older, and this could be part of the ancient traditions that the Titans and the goddess Gaia were involved with here, relating to the Sibyl rock we see here. So just behind me is the great polygonal cyclopean wall of Delphi, which could suggest this site is actually older than people realise. We know there's Neolithic activity here with the caves in the area and the original site of Delphi further up the mountain, but we've seen it down below, we've seen it up on this level as well. It's claimed it was made in the 6th century BC, but we really don't know. The fact is it's right next to the rock of the Sibyl, so this is the fault area. This is where the strange gases and psychotropic effects would occur, just along the edge of this wall. And these walls seem to be connected with oracle sites, whether at Dodona, whether at Delphi, and whether at other sites like the Necromantium and so forth. So this metal pillar is a triple serpent. We have Apollo represented as a serpent, as well as Zeus, who is represented sometimes as a plumed serpent. So here we have the famous temple of Apollo here at Delphi, and this was built upon multiple temples from at least the 7th century BC. But it's here it's said that we have the polygonal wall firstly, and we have the Sibyl just below this, but it was here in tradition that the oracles would receive their information, and this was because there was supposedly a chasm under here where the gas would come up in the Pythia. The priestesses would receive the information, and it would be then translated by the priests who were here. But this is the site of a much older temple, and it even says that on the information board. So the Temple Apollo behind me, and then the Rock of the Sibyl is below. And along here, straight through this temple, the Apollo and Athena energy lines meet, and they go along exactly the same course. And then they go around the Rock of the Sibyl and back along here, suggesting that these energy lines are ancient, and they may have been part of how consciousness was affected by the Pythia, or the Priestesses, who were the oracles of the site. So you see quite a good view of the site here. You can see more of this side of the polygonal wall with the Temple of Apollo above it. The Sibyl stone is down there, and then if you continue up, you've got another polygonal wall heading upwards we'll look at, and then an auditorium which is out of bounds. They're reconstructing it. So we have this polygonal wall just here heading up to the highest part of the site. So all over the site we have this. It's not just one spot, it's not just around the Temple of Apollo. We have it down at the base, we have it high up above the Temple of Apollo. It's quite an impressive site in that respect. I didn't realise it had this much polygonal masonry. You can just see these on these steps here. So all along here we see these protrusions sticking out of the rock, just like we find in other parts of the world, Peru, Egypt, etc. So just at the top, next to the auditorium, theatre, we have more polygonal walls, really beautifully done. So all over Delphi we have these Peru-like constructions. It's pretty amazing. You just see the magnitude of the Temple of Apollo. There's some very large blocks there. Them slabs are probably like 10-15 tons a piece. This would have had to be quarried and brought up to the site. This is not limestone, this is a basalt type rock. We have the massive pillars as well. But the problem is with this site, we must remember that much of this site has been reconstructed, because there was actually a village built on top of this, and it was ruined underneath, but it actually weirdly preserved some of it. So this is interesting. Look at this, deep buried within the kind of hidden part of the site. We have massive polygonal blocks here now. We're not just talking smaller ones like we find on the main wall around below the Temple of Apollo. These are absolutely gigantic. So this could be the inspiration. This could be the earliest. The Danaans, the Pelasgians, even the Titans or the Cyclops would have been here at the time before the Olympian gods. There you can see it's beautifully put together. And this has been here a very long time. This seems to be much older than the famous polygonal wall around the Temple of Apollo. But one of these blocks here, just down here for instance, is like 10 feet long, maybe 9 feet, by about 4 feet tall. So that could, if it goes as far back as it is width wise, that could be like 40 tons maybe. And then we go over here as well, go over into the corner, just let my camera adjust to that, and we can see they kind of join up in the corner there. And there's a huge block here, which is a massive block actually. It goes down there. So it's got a big flower design. Look at that, isn't that remarkable? Look at these keystone cuts. These are major. Did they really pour metal into this to hold the stones together? If so, why is that one not joining anything? Was it to transport the energies around? We're just walking back down. We're just looking at we're looking at the famous polygonal wall, and you can just see some of the shaping here. It's not as big as the stuff we just saw down below. So just behind me, behind this fence, is the original ancient spring of Delphi, one of many, but this one is thought potentially to be Neolithic. It was a big rock face with slopes carved into it and niches, and the water would be collected here, and people still come and collect the water now and drink it regularly. And it was the Pythia, or Python, was the dreaded god who said to reside in the mountains behind the spring. It was Apollo who obviously saved the day and so forth. But, you know, it was then developed into the spring of Delphi. So thanks for watching, Megalithomaniacs. I hope you enjoyed the video. Please remember to subscribe, click the bell icon to get updates, and if you can, support us on Patreon. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.